Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Coffee and Open Source, a place to meet some new friends, have some great conversations, and maybe learn something on the way. I'm your host, Isaac Levin. And if you're enjoying the conversation here, be sure to like, subscribe, follow if you're watching or listening. Also, if you or someone you know like to come on the show and have a chat with me, if you go to isaacr11.com, you'll see all the different social media, I guess you can call them places or channels or whatever that I'm at. My handle is usually isaacr11, but you can find me if you just go to that website and take a look. With that out of the way, let's get started. My guest is awesome. I'm looking forward to having a chat with them. You know, the show is about coffee and open source, and I don't think there's very many people that know open source better than Jimmy Bogard. So Jimmy, you want to say hello, introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Jimmy Bogard. I guess we already covered that part. Software consultant and now product company owner as well. So glad to be on.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the company owner thing, because I think, you know, it is fascinating to me when people all of a sudden decide, you know what, this thing that has been like my little pet project or something that, you know, I made for myself is now being used by millions of people, to now I probably can figure out a way to pay my mortgage with it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to figure out when you got started. When did you realize that technology was the thing for you, Jimmy?
Oh gosh. So I had computers in my house growing up. And I'm a kid of the 80s, so it was not many of my friends actually had computers in their house in the 80s, but we did, because my dad was a civil engineer and he used computers to help do his civil engineering stuff.
Yeah.
So growing up, we had one of those old Compaq portable computers. It weighed 50 pounds, but it was portable. So it had a keyboard that would attach to it, and then it was in this case, this big old plastic case that you could carry around like that. So just having computers in the house very early, and he had programming books. So he had one book on DOS commands, another book on basic programming. So I started the basic programming book and realized I needed to learn how the operating system works. So the DOS commands book, I started with the first command and worked my way through up until D, because I got to DEL, and that was not a command you should just experiment with on your dad's work computer.
Yeah.
No.
Was this a Windows 2.0 or was it even before that?
Oh no, before that. So It was no Windows. It was just DOS. So some kind of, IBM DOS something or other. So yeah, it was still, an IBM clone computer because it was Compaq. Yeah. No, Windows, we did get a Windows machine, but that was Windows 95 was when we got one of those things.
Yeah. Because I think Windows 2.0 was the late 80s. And, I think about, I never had an opportunity to I'm a bit, so I was born in 1986. So I turned 40 this year. So I've never, and I got a computer late in life or in high school. And so I never experienced computers without Windows. So it's always fascinating to me. Yeah. It's always fascinating to me when people tell me about they base text-based games or all these things, because they're things that are just a little bit before my time. What were some of the things, you talked about programming, what are some other things about technology or computing that you found interesting initially? Or was it just I can type in these little commands and the computer will do things I tell it to, more or less?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have that same experience where the programming itself gives you this little micro dopamine hit, right? Because you ask the computer to do something and then it does it, and you're like, oh, just keep reinforcing that, the positive feedback loop. So that was a big one early on. Is you can type all these commands into something, and then there's the part where you just you let it go, and it does it by itself. And there's something just so fascinating about that something can just be running these things through this complicated box that you don't understand at all. But it did what you asked, both good and bad. So there was doing those very early. I was making basic games in BASIC. There's a book for basic programming games, and just going through that just kind of ignited that. And so it's just something I kept an eye on as I was kind of going through school. Is this something I want to do as a profession? It took a while, but I did wind up actually as a software developer as my actual kind of main job.
Yeah.
Eventually.
So I guess it's safe to say that, did you think of other careers? Because I think there's a lot of us in tech that like once they get introduced to the computer, they're like, I can't do anything else. Like did you have like other like, oh, maybe you'd be, follow your dad's footsteps and being in civil engineering, which I find like a lot of similarities with like physical engineering or practical engineering with computer engineering, obviously. But were there other kind of jobs that you were thinking about? Like, did Jimmy want to be a dentist at any point or?
No. No medical stuff. Like I don't get grossed out as much, but I'm just like, I prefer not.
Yeah. No, I get you.
No fluids and stuff.
I'm very same. I'm the same. I'm very similar. Yeah.
So when I was in high school, we had a really strong computer science, I wouldn't say department, but like set of classes there. I mean, to the point, like our high school was the state and national champion computer science team that I was on.
Oh, wow.
So that was like, oh, I got super lucky, just like happened to be across the street from a high school that had this pretty good computer science, I guess, program, whatever. But it was just a regular public high school. There's nothing special about it. Just we had a great teacher who really had passion for it and really pushed everyone to do great stuff. So going through that, like I got introduced to a lot of computer science ideas, but everything was so low level of like, logic gates and truth tables and stuff like that. I was like, I didn't see what could be built from that. It's like There was no connection to, like we were just solving like little bitty problems, nothing, we weren't building stuff. And seeing my dad being the engineer, I'm like, well, I want to build things. I don't want to just like solve tiny problems. I want to, solve big problems for people. So I did try out actually civil for one semester, found it was not for me. And then I switched over to electrical and computer engineering. So I was like, I'm going to build the things that my stuff run on.
Yeah.
At least that was the plan anyway.
Yeah. Since you did have like, I guess, an entry into working with computers, like start off at a young age and then actually getting to do practical work in high school, even though it was small, did it prepare you at all for like a college computer science curriculum? Or did you go in there like, and you got hit in the face like first year with like, this is assembler and this is how you write in NASM and all this sort of things?
So I didn't go to school for a CS degree.
Yeah.
It was computer engineering. So it's a slightly different thing. Well, not slightly different. Like I was building the chips themselves.
Oh, okay.
So it actually prepared you quite well because I was like, here are truth tables, and then like the truth tables build into gates, and then like we build these gates and they build more complex structures, accumulators, adders, things like that. You could like, oh, these things I was doing primitives over here build into these larger scale structures. But CS itself didn't really appeal to me, mainly because I went to the University of Texas here in Austin. And all the CS degree specializations were things I didn't care about. It was all like very advanced CS stuff, like neural networks or things like that. I'm like, well, I don't know it, but I don't know if there's going to be a thing. But I know like engineering is the thing. We build stuff, so I could physically see it. So I was more interested in that part of like having something tangible that you build, that you could point at and say, this is a thing I built. So I did tons of embedded system stuff, like building robotics and stuff like that. I love the hybrid aspect of like, I build this, we use like Verilog and VHDL, which are like lower level languages, to then like program the car to solve a robot. I mean, the robot to solve these. So it's like this really cool, like, physical virtual divide I really enjoyed. So yeah, it definitely prepared me for it. There were definitely aspects of the electrical engineering degree I didn't like, which is like, there's a lot of math and physics.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you next.
Advanced.
Yeah.
It got really advanced, like vector calculus and like all that stuff. And I did it, but at the end, I'm like, I don't want to do that part.
Yeah. No,
as my day job.
Oh, I've told the story 1,000 times. Like, I sort of got out of taste with, because I started out in the computer science program. It didn't work out. But one of the reasons why I started to kind of lose interest in computer science was like, I'm not very good at math. Like I got to a certain level at math and I'm like, okay, my brain doesn't work like this. And I can remember being like in a limits and infinite series class, and my brain, I'm sitting there like in like the second or third day. And I'm like, I knew immediately, like my brain's not going to understand any of this, because it was so far theoretical, like past like anything that my brain was comfortable with, that I was like, you know what? No. In a lot of the computer science classes, I think, being the age I am, you were stuck with some professors that had been doing it since the punch card days, and they thought that there's one particular way to learn computer science, and that just didn't really gel with me. So I moved over to like an information systems degree, which is basically like computers and business. So like I learned how to like do UML, like systems design and a database design and how to build web pages. And that, at least to me, that hit the dopamine way harder than like, we're going to learn how, log O ordination works and all this stuff. Right. Because I was actually building things to your point earlier. It's like actually get to keystroke website updates, keystroke, whatever. Right.
That's why I really like the engineering degree, because like one of my last semester, like we gave this like big senior project, and it's a full project from the beginning of the semester to the end. So you worked on one thing the entire time, and I love that because like I was able to get out of school with like a lot of experience building a full end-to-end from concept to fiddling, tweaking with it, and actually like demonstrating at the end. And it wasn't just rooted in theory. It's like, no, well, it's a physical car. It was a muscle control car. So you did this and it made the car go.
I mean, that's awesome.
Like there's a physical thing, you can see it. And I did, it was very rewarding to like see the results of your efforts. So when I got into the workforce, and it was the same thing, like, oh, we have a project we're doing that we have these ideas and we iterate on the ideas and then we build it and it comes out 6 months later on the other side. It's like, oh, this sounds familiar. I know how to see these projects through.
Did it also teach you to be patient? Because I think too, like the slow burn of things. I think now, like we live in this world where like the dopamine drip has to be constant, right? Or we get very frustrated. But like working on long projects like that, like you have to learn like some level of patience, because like you can't, build a bridge in a day. Right. Like my grandfather was a civil engineer. He used to like build bridges like in the city of New York. So like the idea is like, oh, like a project is 5 years. Right. Like, and it's hard for my brain to really comprehend that. Right. Because now we live in this world where it's like, if you're not building something and shipping it in like 6 months, like some version, like people look at you like, why are you so slow? So do you think it like gave you a little bit of patience, like doing that practical engineering work, that you had to be dependent on so many external things to be able to complete the job?
Yeah. So I don't do ECE in my day job and haven't done it ever actually as my day job. But there's always this argument of like, well, is it worth doing those 4-year degrees because I'm learning how to do something that doesn't like, I'm not building computers, but for me, there was not just the patience aspect of it, but just so many other just like random little skills that only you kind of need to be in this environment that allows you to fail. Like it says, you can try these things out and they're not going to fire you because of it. Like it gives you those ways to experiment. So that's one of the reasons I've really loved engineering too, is because it's so rooted on like the practicalities of the physical world that you can't go away for 6 months and not have nothing to show for it. Like you have to be incrementally working on it. You have to have these little checkpoints of like, I need to build small, incrementally go and build it as I go. You can't assemble something over 6 months and then expect it to work at the end.
Yeah.
So all those projects were always like these very small incremental steps. Even like a lot of my approaches to even testing in software comes from engineering, because we were not allowed to submit projects unless the project tested itself. I would have to hit a button to say, are all the circuits working? Is everything good? It would show a green light. That means like the system was working. And so the professors were very much like, once you ship this to your customers, you can't go like rip it open. So it needs to be able to tell you if something's wrong. It has to like be able to self-test. So just things like that, like, of course you would test software because it's too expensive once you've already shipped to like fix bugs. So that all came from just this sort of engineering mindset that was drilled into our heads.
Well, isn't it crazy too? Like the things that you're describing is very much like the agile way of building software, which, hasn't really like, it didn't pick up probably till like 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and there's like, you're talking about some other disciplines that are kind of practicing like the agile methodology, but like software never, because the idea of like, we only ship software twice a year and that's it. Like that was so ingrained in our thinking for so long. Like I'm genuinely curious. It's like, what are some other things that you remember from like that sort of like ESC sort of work when you were in college, like building those projects, to like how you think about build, like you mentioned like the testing things, like what are some other things that are some kind of parallels that you kind of picked up over time?
I know this is something I saw later when I got like so into agile and lean software and stuff like that. But one of the things that we saw was like, well, if you have two ideas and you don't know which one's the right idea, one common thing you can do is just try both ideas. So it's something that people don't really try a lot in the project I'm on, of like, I'm not talking like little like, should this method be here or be over there, but sort of bigger modeling ideas of like, well, which model is correct? We don't know until we actually put it into practice. So one of the things we would do is we would have like, okay, we're in a group project. We say, we don't know which is the right way to go. So we're going to take a week. Each of you is going to go off and do your version of it. We're going to come back and see like which one is the, objectively, subjectively the better way to go. And so that's something I've also tried in some of our teams of like, if we have the time and the budget, which is not always the case, of like, we don't know which model is going to work. Just try both for a time box period of time and come back and let's compare the two and see which one we think is going to be the best fit. It's just this experiment, like software is so easy to change, but sometimes we're so hesitant to experiment with it for some reason. And I'm like, this experimentation, sometimes you have to see things put into practice. So, I mean, you see it all the time with like marketing stuff, with like A/B testing, stuff like that. But I don't see as much being done like doing the actual design of the software of, we don't have to be married to the whiteboard. We could try to implement both over a few days and then see where those cracks in the model are, and then come back together after you've tried it out to say, okay, which one makes the most sense.
It is pretty fascinating that we really only think about like A/B testing or testing like when we're rolling out new, and it's just like it's on or off, right? At least in software, like we talk about like, oh, we're going to roll out a new feature, like roll it out to 10% of users or whatever, right? But like we never really think about that sort of testing, like, or that sort of building, like initially. It's usually like you said, some guy who's got an architect title is on a whiteboard and said like, yeah, like we're going to do the N-tier architecture approach. And then everybody's like, yes, we shall do the N-tier architecture approach. And then it's like, that is the gospel and we just march on it, right? And then when it's time to ship new features, it's just, okay, we want some people to test this feature for us, but we don't want everybody to experience this feature. Let's turn on a little bit. And I like your idea where it's like, just send two different people in two different directions and see what comes back the best. I think that having people of differing opinions is essential to building software, because otherwise you're going to build the same software over and over and over again. Here's a question for you. And this is probably my favorite question to ask people. Like when did, like, obviously, like you graduated from school and you eventually got a job. When did you realize that building software correlated into making pretty good money?
When I could not get a job in ECE, that was probably it.
Yeah.
When there was $0 in my degree. And so I graduated in 2003, which is quite a while ago, but at that time, I knew that engineering disciplines were cyclical. I mean, after seeing my dad in civil engineering for decades, anytime the oil price went down, and we were in Houston, so like that would affect the whole city. It was like then there were all these firings, and then he'd say, well, I got to try something else. So he'd find some other discipline in civil engineering that was more in demand and go for that. So even watching his career, like he didn't end in the same civil engineering discipline that he started. It just, you have to kind of ride the waves. So unfortunately, I of school as well as all of my cohorts at the very bottom of a wave. And so I think half my graduating class did not have a job coming out. So that's just like, whereas usually with ECE is like 99% of people get jobs. They're just like, they're throwing jobs at these people, but I just happened to graduate then. So I had to look around, like I had to do something, find something. And I had been building this, probably like a lot of people, I've been building websites on the side for people.
Because of .com. Yeah, because of .com.
Yeah, so it was like family, friends, like, hey, can you find someone to build a website for us? And I found some people, and then I'm like, you know what? I bet I could do this. Go to the store, get the front page 2000 Bible, and build a website myself. So that I was already doing that like on the side, just to earn a little bit of money. When no one was hiring double E's, I was like, well, maybe someone wants to hire a web developer, and someone was. So that just kind of started me out realizing like, oh, this programming is a skill that can be applied to any industry. And if I just stick to computer engineering, I'm really in a single industry that does have, ups and downs. But if I go to programming, something that's more general purpose, then I can ride any wave. And that's just kind of stuck with me as, no matter what happening in one industry, some other industry is going to be like needing work. And so that's, once I kind of realized that, I'm like, okay, well, this is a better long-term choice anyway, because it's industry agnostic. I don't have to be. I'm not stuck to any one set of cycles.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think too, like to your point about how if you're a software engineer or you build software, it kind of transcends disciplines, right, or transcends industries. Like I didn't really acknowledge that or think about that until like I've been working at a job for a bit, and then I was like, oh, like what other jobs are out there? Because I was kind of getting whatever with my current job. I saw there wasn't a lot of interesting things to do. And then I realized like, oh, I can apply to like any company as long as I have like the skills. Like it could be in banking, it could be in real estate, it could be whatever, right? Like, and what I found fascinating is that the problems are all kind of the same. That like, and I had this like moment of like, hasn't anybody figured out that all these problems are the same? So they should just figure out something to like solve the same problem, and then you find out that people have tried to do that 1,000 times. It never quite works the way they want it. Like, did you have like a sort of moment like that too, where like you recognize like, oh, like I'm building like a lot of the same, like I have a database, I need to have a UI on top of the database and rinse repeat over and over and over again. Like, did you kind of pick that up over time, or were your projects differing enough where you didn't really realize that most like quote unquote like LOB or line of business apps are the same?
It wasn't really until I got into consulting, where I got to see all the industries basically. Because my first job out of university was I worked at a small startup company, earning just over minimum wage because they didn't have money either. One of those very startups that didn't have funding, I guess. And then after that, I worked at a product company. So it was just basically two specific industries. Once I got into consulting and you start to see, I mean, there's going to be subtle differences between all of them. Like every company is going to have their own special way of doing things. So yes, everything is sort of like UI over a database. So once you've kind of gotten that, then the interesting thing is, well, how do we model your business problem in a way that's then easily realized in software? Because that's another kind of thing you get out of consulting is like everybody thinks they have the most complex problem on earth. And then there's a lot of complexities in real life. So that's like a lot of my early career was just learning not how to build software, but how to build business software, which is quite a bit different. I had to learn like as much of, how to write the right software, but also what software not to write, which is, I think, even more important to say like, what shouldn't we build? Because it's going to add complexity, add extra cruft, extra weight, and just add things to the system that doesn't necessarily need to be there, and it's now set in stone. So like learning to just like make systems flexible where they could be, and don't try to like hard code every single kind of business rule in there. So just seeing all those different industries going through consulting gave me both the like reductive, everything looks the same, but also if they were all the same, then everyone would just be building, buying off-the-shelf software, but we don't, right? And I see that with my stuff today, even now. Like I could just use the off-the-shelf software, but that means that my business process needs to fit their idea of what the process should be, and I don't want it to be for reasons. Just going through that experience, learning all the different kinds of industries out there, definitely taught me like the similarities, and then also those like subtle differences that make all the difference in the world.
I was talking to so I went and spoke at the university that I graduated from college. I spoke to like their information or their like they're basically their IT sort of group, like their their student club thing. And somebody was asking me about this exact thing about like, what sort of things do you get to build in the real world? because, they're in college and they're building like whatever. And I kind of had the same sort of conversation with you where it's like, yeah, you can build the same thing over and over again. But I was like, once you get into the real world, you'll see that like people have taken Excel and done like disgusting things with Excel, or they've taken like Microsoft Access and done disgusting things with Microsoft Access. And you recognize that people are trying to fit their custom business into a solution that was not made for custom businesses, right? And then you have to go in there, and as a consultant, as you typically know, it's like, okay, let's take this Excel spreadsheet and turn it into a system, right? That's like consulting. That's like the number one consulting job that I think most consultants have done. They've taken some Excel spreadsheet and turned it into some software of some kind, whether it's a desktop app or a web app or whatever. And what I've always found fascinating is that when you actually talk to people that are, as you build up business requirements, like things become substantially overcomplicated because they've had to accommodate software that wasn't meant for that job. And what I mean is like, oh, we would have to like, oh, we do things this particular way because you can't really do it with this formula in Excel. So we have to do this thing. And it's like, oh, so you create like an entire business process around like the fact that you're using Excel instead of like a proper like workflow engine of some sort or building it. Right. Here's my question for you. Here's a question for you. Do you think it's valuable? And I've said this a few times that for people out of college, for their first job is to be in consulting, if they have the opportunity to do so, because you just, like you said, you learn such a large breadth of things, like how industries work. You usually can touch different pieces of technology. Do you think that's extremely valuable, or do you think that the consulting model in a lot of cases is a lot for somebody coming right out of school?
So I'll start first with like, I think it's very valuable to get a wide variety of experience early. Consulting can be the way that happens, but I also know plenty of consulting organizations that chew up new grads and spit them out. Like I interviewed at the time, one of the consulting firms that was implicated in the whole, Enron thing.
Yeah.
So they had changed their name and I didn't recognize their name. Like, who is this? And I go, oh, it's them. But it just turns out they were one of the organizations that chewed up new grads and spit them out. Meaning like you would have to travel 80%, which basically meant 100% except for vacations, basically. And then you weren't necessarily building stuff for a customer. You're just like doing grunt work. Whereas the last consulting company I was with at Headspring, we had a guy that actually designed an onboarding experience for boot camp new grads.
Oh, that's cool.
It's like assume you went to a boot camp, because there's a certain amount of like just sort of nuts and bolts sort of stuff that you need to learn kind of on your own. Can you build a website? Okay, so now let's teach you how to build. Let's teach you how to be a consultant. How to take in these requirements from the end user, to scrutinize them, to say, let's find holes in them. And then actually, let's teach you how to build this as well. So in Microsoft.NET, C#, maybe you don't know all those things, but that's okay. It's, Java, TypeScript, you squint at it, it's almost C#. And so we have built this whole pipeline of getting people productive and being like, actual consultants. So if you're lucky enough in a place that can like shepherd you through that process, then I'd say that's definitely the case. But otherwise, I look at my first few jobs, and I used to get, crap from my family, like, oh, you change jobs every 2 years.
Sure, yeah.
But the reality was like I would get to the point where I wasn't being presented with any new challenges. And if you're like in your 20s and you're not being challenged, like I need to find something else then. So I worked at that startup for, year and a half, 2 years. I worked at a product company for 2.5, 3 years. I worked at big corp IT for just a year because I realized I hated it. And then I worked consulting. So just having that kind of trying different things and not being too stuck on one place, knowing that, being in Texas and at-will state, anyone can fire me at any time for almost any reason. So I shouldn't feel like obligated to stay somewhere if I'm not like being challenged. I don't see a future there. So I would move on. I would find the next thing and find the next challenge. So that's the biggest thing. Is like, if you can find a place that you find challenging and you can learn, that's great. But if you can't find it there, don't hesitate to move on.
Yeah.
Because Yeah, that's just the nature of this business.
Oh yeah, and you only have like, X amount of time on this planet, right? And do you really want to
Well, yeah.
yeah, you don't want to think about your job, like you don't want to think about like your job as being a core part of your life, but like you spend at least a third of your life working, right? Like, and
Yeah.
do you want to be miserable the whole time, or do you want to like maybe try to find something new? But that's an existential problem, I
Yeah.
think, for a
So
lot of people.
but there is something like you do this so many hours out of a day. I at least want it to be rewarding. That's one
Yes.
of the things I loved about building software. It's I can think of the worst experiences I've had in software development, and they've all been cases where my product didn't ship for one reason or the other. It's like I did all this work and it never saw the light of day. Like what a terrible, I feel like I just completely, like not only did the customer waste their time hiring me to build something, but it never was ever used. So it's like what a waste of time and
Yeah.
energy and money that all was. Um, I mean, besides like, I've made mistakes in my career.
Sure.
Those sucked, but just in terms of like professional experiences, it's always been like the things that didn't ship were always like the worst possible feeling.
I think too, like, and I'm gonna kind of make an observation about you specifically in your career, and if I'm incorrect, please, correct me. But I mean, you've been doing like you spent like a large amount of your career consulting, and I think the value that I see in people that have consulted for a long time is that they have like this sort of they have this quality in that they really are looking for problems to solve. And, I think, even back to like when you were in school and like you're talking about like solving problems iteratively and, getting value out of that. Have you always been somebody that through your entire life is like tried to find problems to solve? And I mean that in a healthy way. I don't mean that like looking at they're looking for problems, but like, have you always seen things as like, oh, there's potentially a problem that could be solved here?
Yeah, I probably should seek therapy about it because I do like if I fix the problems like around the house, I'm looking for that squeaky drawer
Sure.
somewhere.
Sure, sure.
Can I just relax for a second? I mean, I can relax. It's just, yeah, there is that thing of like, what is the next kind of meaty problem to solve? Because I just enjoy that aspect. But I've always liked that. I've like, that's one of the reasons I did engineering is I enjoyed the problem solving aspect of it. What consulting really told me was really about budgeting of
Yeah.
the time to solve a problem. Because if you go off and spend a week of the customer's money trying to solve a problem that they didn't really see the value in you solving, they might want their money back. Like I didn't ask you to solve. Like even if it was a good problem to solve, it definitely helped me learn. Like, well, this is not my money, it's their money. If I believe in strongly in the solving this problem, I have to get them on board, but also just tailoring my solutions to the budget of like, I can't design the ivory tower because they didn't, the statement of work didn't say ivory tower. It said this,
Yeah.
Just scaffolded tower thing. So I got to make sure my designs fit the budget. And that was what I really learned from consulting versus prior product experience. I could hide and incorporate it to your product. I could just go hide for a month, fiddling away on something, and then come back. And maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. But I didn't. With consulting, you don't have that just infinite freedom. You really have to be focused on the business problems you're trying to solve for the customer.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like you get that, like you said, that sort of that social skill, and it's like I don't want to call it people pleasing, but you very much want to make people happy, right? Because your livelihood depends on like people enjoying your presence, whether your presence in delivering value or your presence in like, oh, Jimmy's a cool guy to be around. Like maybe we'll just keep him around because he can solve problems and he's not a dick. Right. Like
there's that.
Yeah. So like, I mean, so I think that there are some valuable skills in of doing consulting work just that are on the technical side as well as on the personal side. And in another one, and this is kind of leading into like what Jimmy's probably known best for in the world that Jimmy is known. It's like you see a lot of the similar problems, and then you figure out like shortcuts to solve problems, right? Like we're not going to go into like the history of AutoMapper or MediatR, but it's like those were projects that you use that ended up becoming things that a lot of other people saw value in using, right? Mm-hmm. So like I'm going to phrase this question in a particular way, like. At what point in your career did you start to recognize you were seeing the same patterns over and over again? So it made sense to build software that you can kind of take from one project to another to be able to kind of deliver value faster, because that was the initial goal, right? Is to be able to, well, one, you do want to write the same thing over and over again, but you also want to deliver faster.
Yeah, that started in consulting, because in the 2 product companies, right, that was all proprietary. Like they were looking at like, what patents can we author for this so that we solidify our IP, blah, blah, blah. Corporate IT, they didn't care what I did at all. So I like rewrote the build script 6 times because I had nothing else to do. But it was consulting, and this wasn't from me either, because I was, at the time, I was the employee number 6 at this consulting company. It grew to like 200-ish or so at the end. But one of the guys that the guy that recruited me was Jeffrey Palermo, who also did a bunch of open source before me on his own. And so when we were doing those projects, like we had no problem also picking open source libraries to work with, because he had done that on his previous projects. Like we used Unit and Nance and Castle Monorail, which was an MVC framework before Microsoft made their own. And Hibernate, that was another one. So we were using all these tools because he had also used all those tools in previous projects and previous employers as well. Of course, he didn't get it himself either. He got it from someone else, and that person got it from someone else, and that person got it from someone else. So I just got, at Headspring, we were immediately a company that was like, we'll choose open source technologies because our customers are not asking us to solve a problem only using Microsoft tools. They were just asking us to solve problems. And so like, we didn't have any problem using this open source tool. So it's just a natural extension to say, Jeffrey had already had some open source projects at the time. And so it wasn't really a question initially. I mean, there was one initial question of like, this seems useful outside of this project. What do we do with it? So there was an initial question of like, do we license it? This was like 2008.
Yeah.
So we were asking way back then, should we license it? But we made the decision, like, well, we were a consulting company. I was number 6. We had like 12 at the time. Like we can't grow a consulting company and have some random library that we're trying to sell with no customers. Like that's a whole other ball. Actually, like, we'll just open source it. And then, so go off the books, re-implement it over here to the side, pull it in as a library, and then boom, now we can, maybe not leverage on the next project, who knows? So that philosophy that like we ingrained that into that consulting company, of that it wasn't just me building open source. We had several folks there that were passionate about or ran into something in their project and like, hey, I think this could be used on other clients. So we like, well, let's take a look. Okay, looks like it could be useful. So the organization would effectively pay their bench time to make it an open source project. So the company would directly fund and sponsor that work if we all saw it was, could be useful for the next client or any subsequent clients. Like, sure, there's less things that we can do and also makes a name for the company. All these, hit all 3 client, customer, employee benefits.
Yeah, it's a pretty novel concept, right? Like you provide value in other ways than just like shipping people, right? Like, because I imagine at a particular point in time, people start to come to you because of your, I guess you could say, your cachet, right? It's like, oh, Jimmy's doing this, so like let's bring in their consulting company to do these sort of things. Like you sort of, bring a little reputation with yourself, right? And with that, I imagine comes like a little bit of good things, but also like a little bit of bad things, right? Like people want to contribute to your project and they want to, tell you to do things to your project and do all these things. Like, how have you, over the course of your career, like with these projects, how have you sort of maintained sanity? Right. And we'll talk about like how I think you truly maintain sanity, like in a second, but like, before you made the decision to sort of figuring out like licensing models, like how did you maintain sanity knowing that you would get people coming in asking for random things, or people coming in and contributing in ways you didn't want them to, even though they meant the best, they're still not contributing the way you want them to. Like, I guess my question is like, how did you figure out like the most effective way to like run these projects without them turning into like full-time jobs?
So a lot of that was trial and error of just trying things and just seeing if they would work, and then pivoting from there. I was sort of lucky early on in my open source days that there were other prominent folks in the .NET community that were doing open source work that I saw them get like severe, serious burnout of like affecting their health and stuff. I won't name names, but
Sure.
I'm sure they absolutely know who they are. And so I saw that. I was like, I don't want to ever have that happen to me with my open source. Like, either being stressed that it's not getting the attention that I think it deserves, or it's getting too much attention, and now that's like negatively affecting me because I have all these demands on my time, whatever. So early on, I realized like I don't like, I was spending time outside of work working on these open source projects, but because I wanted to. It was like there was a problem with it and I wanted to fix it because of the problem, not because like people were banging on my door asking me for things. It was more like, it was one example was AutoMapper. The initial model of it was all completely static oriented, so like static variables, static everything. And I copied the entire interface off another project, and the guy told me, don't do that. It was a mistake. And I was like, well, it sure does look easy though. And of course I regretted it later. So I went to this whole rewrite of the internals of it to make it more efficient, more performant, all that stuff. But it was just something I wanted to fix because I wanted for my own like problem solving sake. Yes, it was going to help people. Like it went from like terrible performance to like not bad performance. And a lot of it just came from like me completely reworking the internals to write a bunch of mistakes. But I was just like annoyed at these problems in the software that I was maintaining. Like, oh God, I hate I hate this. You see like it's like I'm like seeing like a messy room. You walk by it every day. And you're like, God, just get on my nerves. This messy room. Just take a day and go fix it. So early, I was working on it outside of company hours, but at some points, you get kids and everything. Like that's not happening anymore. I value that time outside of doing other activities than that. So that's when I started to realize, like, okay, I am only going to do work on this outside of hours if it's something that I'm just completely bored and like whatever.
Sure.
Otherwise, my time was sponsored by my employer at the time. So like I was between projects. Like, yeah, let's go fix something in there that needs fixing because we have direct clients that are needing it for some reason.
Yeah.
So my work on it was really driven, like 95% was just what my customers, not mine, the consulting company's customers, like I may not even be my project, but someone else would have an issue. And we would have these meetings where we talked about these sort of things. Like every 2 or 4 weeks, we'd have these tech lead meetings of like what things in our catalog of open source are people hitting issues with, and we can fix with people on the bench. So it pivoted from like fun thing I was doing in the evening because I just wanted to, and as I enjoyed tinkering with software, to like, no, I am only going to do this in service of customers, and then maybe a little bit from time to time of just like to keep it a relevant open source project to keep it up to date, new framework drops, new .NET version drops, update the things, whatever. But it was mainly just whatever people that are paying my salary ask me to do is what I was doing.
Yeah. No, I mean, and then eventually you get to a point where you recognize like there's something here, right? And, I've talked to a few people that have, created large open source projects and they've decided to figure out licensing for them. Like I've had Dennis Duman on the show. I've had, I look at my list. I can't think of all of them, but but I guess my point is that everybody has their own reasons, right? Like for making the decision to like, okay, I think there is opportunity here to have a business around a commercialized licensed version of this thing. Do you have, was there like a visceral moment for you when you recognized, like, I think it is time for these things to start paying Jimmy back?
No, it was one of those like change. I forget who said it, but it's like change happens two ways gradually, then all at once.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that. I mean, even when I went, so a week before COVID lockdown, I went independent consulting. So I moved from the company that was at Headspring, and then I decided to try my hand at being independent. So that was one of the things I was just like, I want to scratch that itch, right? I'd been in this consulting company for a long time, and I saw a lot of other people in the community that were going independent and doing their thing. So I was like, well, if I'd never do this, I will kick myself. So let's give this a try. But what that meant that though was that the previous company, Headspring, would directly support me to do these open source projects, and everyone at the company, right? It's like everyone had the equal opportunity to work on open source, provided that, it served the three needs: the company, the customer, and then, the employees, whatever. So we did have definitely projects that were like, that seems like not useful to anybody. If you're building an open source Rubik's Cube solver, I'm like,
sure,
that doesn't really, that we'll never implement that at a customer. I mean, maybe someday some Rubik's Cube solver customer comes in, like, we really need that solution, but like, I'd have to align to all three things. But when I went independent, I lost my sponsor, which was, I was not going to sponsor myself anymore, because it was always in service of customers. And if customer didn't need it, I wasn't going to work on it. So that was the part of the change was like, okay, after being independent for a while, I look back like, oh, how things been going with the consulting business. And one of the things I saw was that everything consulting was rewarding all that stuff, but the open source work just dropped off a cliff. Because if I was taking, before I had like a company to fill in gaps, right? I would get salary between the gaps of projects, and I didn't feel bad about working on this open source because it was in service of the company.
Sure.
If I'm in a gap as a solo consultant, though, I'm just thinking about the next project. I'm not taking time off to go work on open source. I am strictly, but let's find the next project because that's my paycheck.
Yeah.
And so, yes, like you structure a solo consulting business so that you can weather these gaps, but that doesn't mean I take a gap and just work on whatever I want. I thought that initially, actually. I thought going independent was going to give me infinite flexibility to do whatever I wanted. But the reality was, like, I'm still going to chase the contracts that come in.
Yeah.
That's going to be my focus. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to like just do, solely focus on that. I have to. So I got to this kind of reckoning. I'm looking back, like, this is really suffering. I should do something with this. Like, I don't want to just let it die because I still use the projects. I just am not spending any time making them better or anything. And I can kind of see that too with, like, I had to put in around the same time, I put in all these sort of GitHub issue bots. I forget what bots are, like auto close bots. And so basically every issue, every pull request would go stale and get closed. We had other maintainers that were like much more vigilant about like closing something is not closing, not fixed, close won't fix, close won't fix. It was, I know I would get these angry emails of like, why is every issue getting closed? I'm like, it's not my job to answer GitHub issues. I'm not going to. Like, I will try if I have like this little bit of extra time, but otherwise, as someone that's now self-employed, I really was focusing on like, just building out that company. And I wasn't getting like, it's not like I was getting support contracts for AutoMapper. Like AutoMapper and MediatR, all these projects that I use are always in service of a larger thing, which is not the case for all open source projects. You look at like Akka.net or like Jeremy Miller's Critter Stack. Those are like much more ambitious projects that cover a lot more things, cover a lot more architecture, where my stuff is much more targeted. So I may use my libraries on projects, but they were never the focus. So I was like, I should do something with this because I don't want to let these projects just die. So that was probably, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. I started looking at like what are the options available to me, and then after talking to a dozen, 20 people or so that made the similar jump, decided to go this route of building an actual product company around it and selling licenses to ensure that it does, stay alive and continue to grow and thrive, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think that, we were talking about this the last time I saw you about how, your approach to this is in my opinion like very methodical. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't get that fucking word out of my mouth. Like you were actually had intent, and I think the sometimes I see projects that it's like, you know what, I'm done doing this for free, right? And and that's fine, but I think that if you come at it from your perspective, where it's like, I know that this, like, no one's gonna buy like this thing specifically unless they have a reason to buy this thing. In my opinion, is grounded in reality a bit. Whereas I think some other folks, I think they're a bit more ambitious, like you were kind of mentioning. Not that that's bad. I think it's just
No, it's not bad. But I'm with you there. Like I didn't have any ambitions with this. My goal was simply sustainability. Just like projects of this size and this caliber, this complexity, this popularity, really. Because like if I build an open source project no one uses, it's who cares. But once you get to a certain amount of users out there, then it requires some kind of corporate sponsorship if it's not going to be your hobby. And I knew it was not my hobby. This is not something I'm doing in my free time. My free time, I'm doing other stuff, like hanging out with my kids, playing video games, whatever. Like I am not working on open source as a hobby. And because it's not my hobby, then I would need to have it being done as part of my day job. So that was like the next thing. It used to be part of my day job. How do I get it back to be part of my day job? But knowing that it wasn't going to be part of my day job as a solo consultant. That's just not, those two things don't really mix together because of the nature of what I was consulting upon, which is, the same things I was doing back at Headset, which is big, long-term business projects. I wasn't doing go to a customer for a week and go to another customer. I was like building systems over 6 to 18 months on one client. So like I can't like weave in open source work if they don't use it. It's like, well, I'm not going to work on AutoMapper if this client doesn't use it, like because I'm working on their stuff. So during that time, I actually spun up other open source projects from those customers, and that's always been my MO. Is like whatever customer I'm on, if there's something that is not required for them, I'm like, well, is this an opportunity to pull out into something else? It just so happens two of my projects got popular, but all of them were the same idea of coming out of big client projects. So I was like, the ambition was simply like sustainability. Like I lost my sponsor and I wanted to regain some level of sponsorship back, like corporate sponsorship that was sustainable, not like one-off begging for GitHub sponsor money, that sort of thing.
I mean, I don't know if you're being 100% truthful, because I'd imagine that you like breathe PubSub, right? Like every morning, every day, you think of like, in message processing, like you wake up every day and you're like, how can I make this world better? No, in all seriousness, like I would like to know too, like obviously, in going from shipping software or shipping libraries and have somebody else writing you checks is substantially different than you being your boss, right? So like, what was the one thing that kind of hit you in the face or surprised you when you made that transition to being like a full-time consultant, full-time, Jimmy's got a shingle, right? Like what was like one of the things that like startles you initially, and now you're like, okay, now I understand why people do this?
So my transition to solo consultant, I think it was a bit different than others because I still was basically strictly working through agencies that were actually getting the statements of work, because I like working on big long-term projects. I can't really do that by myself. Like I don't have other developers. It's just me. So I would always team up with our agency. Like a big one I I mean, besides just the previous consulting company, I just transitioned to hourly. So like, I'm gonna be on the same projects as I was before. Now you just pay me hourly, and that's that. So I didn't get exposed to anything more or less than I was already exposed to as a consultant at Headspring. What was definitely very different going to the product side was just my assumption that by just putting a page up with a credit card, that everyone would just do that.
Sure.
And then kind of forgetting, because like I wasn't terribly involved, but I'd be tangentially involved with procurement decisions and procurement processes working at Headspring. You know, we'd have to get onboarded with customers, but that didn't happen that frequently for large enterprises. Like we would land one or two big enterprises a year, the Fortune 500 sort of things, that have a big core procurement process as part of it. But now, as a product company that is used quite a bit by enterprise customers, it means that I am hit a lot by procurement processes, way more than I was before. Like I was not, I would be like exposed to it kind of, but mainly our sales team would do all the procurement forms. But with this, it's just me.
Yeah.
So I have to fill these things out. So I've gone through this whole like, I don't know, I've gone through all ages of grief of like, anger, denial, of just, another security thing, another this, another that. But, having been exposed to them for a while, like, that's just the nature of the beast. So I can complain about it and just say, forget you, I won't do these things, or just recognize it's just part of this, part of what I've chosen to do is sell to large enterprises. And that means now they can't just put a credit card number on a page and have it work. I mean, some can, but big corp enterprise is not going to work that way.
Yeah. Is it safe to say that the worst part about running a business is the business part of it? Is like the actual like like things that are outside, like the legal, the financial, the marketing, the messaging, like, is that in your opinion, the part that you dislike the most? Or is that the stuff that, since you've never really done a lot of it, that you find more interesting?
Yeah, the second one, because I haven't done it before. With the solo consulting, like 95% of the business I got in was through agencies. So I wasn't really doing that, like any kind of public marketing or thing. I mean, besides what I was, blogging and speaking, I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a consultant. So if you want, blah, blah, blah. But like my calendar was full. So I'm like, I don't really need to do that work because I'm working through these agencies that's just fine work anyway. So I was fine. But yeah, now doing the actual, so I take back one step. One thing that doing the solo consulting did do for me is that I had to do like all the logistics of a single company. So all the insurance work, the taxes, the accounting, the bookkeeping. Did I say insurance? Yeah, I'm in the States, so insurance is a thing. Invoicing, payments, all that stuff. Like I had to figure all that stuff out in a pretty safe environment, because all my customers, if it was a direct customer, they typically knew me personally. Like I would go physically meet them, whatever. So I didn't have to worry about like chasing invoices with those. I never had to chase an invoice as a consultant, which is not a normal experience, it turns out. Not typical anyway. But I had to go through all that, all that sort of just the nuts and bolts of running a business. But now with this one, because I am selling a product and never done that before, that's been really fun and interesting, of just coming up with different processes and solutions to the actual business aspect of it. And I mean, even like I went live on day one, and then day two, someone asked, we need an invoice and a quote. And I didn't have that built. It's like I have no way to issue a quote and invoice. I'm like, I just wanted people to click a button on a website. And it was like, the world's like, no, it's more complicated than that. So that's been fun, of just, seeing the complexities of the real world. And I'm basically my own product owner now, right? I get to decide what is the right solution for these different problems I'm running into. And then because I know how to build software, I get to actually build the solution myself as well. So that part's been really fun, of just, building something that didn't exist before, and then now I'm my own product owner.
Yeah.
Versus, before I was building software strictly for other people, but now I'm building all that sort of stuff to help me. So, yeah.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, this is a general question based on. I mean, I'll just kind of say this: like when you talk about what you're doing right now, like I can tell there's enthusiasm in what you're saying. Let me just ask this quite plainly: are you enjoying the work now more than you probably have in a long time in your career?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know, because it's the consulting was always very rewarding to build stuff for other people, and see it go live and see it like make an impact.
Yeah.
One of the downsides though of consulting was when you're done with the project, you more or less move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So you don't get to see the sort of like I had long-term clients and that was cool, but some of the most rewarding times of my experiences as consultant was not like the launch day, but then like getting to interview people afterwards, just because we had fallen work and saying like, oh, so tell me about the impact the software has had on your lives. Like I didn't get that very much in consulting. It was like vanishingly small of getting to really hear the impact of the software that you had on people. It was usually like, all right, project's done. You get a short break and now go on to the next client, the next project, doing something else.
New people, so new business, new everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but this one's been like, this has been super rewarding. Just that I had no idea who was using my software before. Like no clue what companies, what industries, what any. I had no connection to the actual people and the companies that were using my stuff to help build their systems. So that's been like probably the most rewarding thing, is just seeing the impact my libraries have had, is by actually seeing here are the people that are actually using it. I just saw a number on NuGet, which is meaningless almost. Like it, I mean, I definitely check it every morning, of course, just to feed my ego.
Yeah.
But there's no humanity behind it. It's just a number. So it's been super great seeing the customers that come and say, yeah, we're using it, we love it, and we want to buy it. I was like, that's so cool to have that feeling of like something you built, someone someone likes it so much they're actually going to pay you for it is like such a rewarding thing, and to see who actually is using it is just so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, I think we're all chasing like some sense of like, oh, like people appreciate us. Like I think humanity in general, like we're predisposed to like people liking us. And I can't imagine like anything feeling better than like some person reaching out to you and be like, hello, Lucky Penny Software. Like we love MediatR and AutoMapper. We would like to give you some money. I can't imagine like much feels better than that, right? It's like marriage, kids, somebody reaching out to you, offering you money for your software, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not just the money. I will say that, like, it's also like that that's a signal that they like it enough to want to actually pay for it. And so that's me like, yeah, there's a ton of people that hate it, which is fine, but to see, and just to see kind words, people like, yeah, we want to give you the money. We want to see this. It's had a big beneficial impact in our company, in our product, in our code base. We want, we want to help support you to make sure this continues to go on in the future.
Yeah. I mean, when we talked when I last saw you in Toronto, like we had a long talk about this, and it just seems like, you've been down this path so long, and like when you made the announcement, it's just like, oh, that is a quite obvious thing. Right. And, it probably didn't seem obvious to you at the time, but I think for a lot of people, like, it's like you don't get very many opportunities to build something that so many people take advantage of and appreciate. Right. And I'm glad that you found, I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this as disparaging, like the courage to kind of step out and say like, yeah, like this thing is sustainable, which I think is awesome. And kudos to you, obviously, for being able to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, it was that. I mean, that was not an easy decision. I didn't know what anxiety attacks were beforehand, but now I do.
Yeah,
because I didn't know what was happening at the time. But yeah, it was like hugely stressful to just make the decision, to make the announcement, because I couldn't control the reaction. Right?
Yeah.
You just can't. and I'm not on Reddit as much as I used to be. I've left some bad comments there. So like, I definitely have been exposed to negative opinions of my open source. So I just didn't. You just don't know what the other side looks like. But I had that feeling like I won't know unless I put it out there.
Yeah.
And the only way to really validate it is to give it a try. And it's like I had great relationships with all the agencies that I work with. So like the worst thing to happen is it fizzles, doesn't work, and I'm like, well, I tried, and I'm just continue consulting because I still enjoy that too. So
yeah. Awesome. Well, Jimmy, it's been great to catch up with you and learn a little bit about your history and, what has motivated you to get to the point where you're on, which, again, congratulations for all the success. And for folks that aren't following Jimmy or, might not be aware of some of the things that he's built, like you can go to jimmybogard.com. So JIMMYBOGARD.com. There'll also be some links to some other social media handles. There's also a link to Lucky Penny Software where you can learn about some of the things that he's built. And if you feel inclined, like reach out to him for next steps. So before we sign off, my friend, do you have any parting words or anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
No, just thanks so much for having me here. It's always fun to catch up and just, shoot the shit,
Yeah. I mean, there's like before we got started, I always tell my guests, it's like, if it goes by quick, it means I did a good job. If you're struggling like half hour in, I didn't do a very good job. So so hopefully you had a good time. And again, I want to thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks for the folks that are watching this live and for the folks that are listening in the future. So my name is Isaac Levin, and this has been Coffee and Open Source. And if you like this episode, share with somebody. I hope they'll get some value out of it. And for my friend Jimmy Bogard, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye.